Hello and welcome to 3 Minute Gaming. I'm Nathan, and today I'm going to tell you if this game's their time and bandwidth. Today's game is Lies of P. The makers of DJ Max, yes really, decided to jump on the Souls bandwagon with Lies of P. Is this Pinocchio game great, or was it all a lie? Let's find out. Lies of P is a Souls-like that draws a lot of its DNA specifically from Sekiro, Bloodborne, and Dark Souls 3, while focusing on polishing that imitation so much you'll be convinced it's a real boy, or Souls game. There was a joke in there somewhere and I botched it. Let's just move on. You play as P, aka Pinocchio, who's awakened by the equivalent of a good fairy and given an AI and a lamp named Jiminy with a G to go find your dad Geppetto. Basically, Geppetto made a bunch of automatons, but something went wrong and they all went crazy and murdered everybody. And also there's some weird animal mask wearing gang killing people, and maybe the energy source turns people into zombies? Basically, everything has gone to pot and you gotta kill stuff. You're here for the gameplay, and I'll save you some time and say if you play Dark Souls 3, you'll feel right at home here. It's a faster Souls-like in terms of combat, with a focus on aggression and a de-emphasis on dodging, and instead relying a lot around its guard mechanic akin to Sekiro's parry system. Guard can block almost any move, and when you do, you'll take reduced damage as temp damage, which you can regain by hitting the enemy back Bloodborne style. However, if you guard at exactly the right moment, you'll do a perfect guard, which negates all damage and costs no stamina. Large enemies can be beat down enough that you can then stagger with a charged heavy attack, allowing for an execution, and a perfectly timed block does big stagger damage. Combat is your standard Souls with a stamina meter as well as the usual heavy and light attacks, with again heavy having a charge. But it's mixed up by a large number of options. The first is your robot arm, which you have a half dozen-ish to equip, that do things like pull enemies to you, light them on fire, spew acid, and so on. Every weapon has both a blade and a handle. The blade determines the base damage, range, and speed, while the handle determines the moveset and stat scaling, and you can mix and match any of them except boss weapons. Want to put a giant greatsword blade on a dagger hilt so you can stab with it? Why not? Each of these parts also has special moves tied to them that burn meter that you gain by attacking, so there's a fun metagame in finding the combo that best suits your playstyle. The levels themselves are very linear, no secret areas or bosses, and with the usual shortcuts to unlock. You'll also have a hub that you'll return to upgrade, level up, and require new abilities. The leveling progression is pretty standard, but there's also an augment system that uses quartz to allow for specific passives that can augment your style further. And honestly, not a ton more to say about Lies of P. The core here is standard, but the execution is very polished, aiming to make a game as solid as its inspiration, just with a steampunk and puppet aesthetic. So what did I like about Lies of P? Well, the combat here is really slick and polished, with the large movesets as well as the whole host of tools available, making every encounter very engaging. Its emphasis on parrying Sekiro style, but with Bloodborne aggression, does make mastering that parry feel incredible. Additionally, on that note, the weapon and arm customization systems are very fun, and finding that perfect combination of blade and hilt to align with your playstyle is an absolute joy. And last, I really did enjoy this game's steampunk horror aesthetic. And while I wish some of the locations have more variety, they do allow environmental storytelling mixed with some really great effects in combat that visually bring the whole thing together. When it comes to the bad, this game really needed more enemy types, as many of them are variations of humanoids in both size and shape, as well as similar enemies with just corruption in the second half of the game, which isn't super exciting. Additionally, the game also has some frustrating balance spikes. Now, I know that skill checks are common in Souls games, but this is exacerbated by a lot of bosses having two phases, and nobody likes having to grind a first phase just to learn the second phase's moves. I'm looking at you, King of Puppets. You are very annoying. And lastly, I do feel this game suffers a bit from following the Souls formula maybe too much. Stuff like the Titanite upgrades, the identical control schemes, bonfires, poison swamps, and even some animations being identical are noticeable and do diminish a bit of the game's otherwise consistent originality. But then again, maybe it's supposed to act like a puppet copy, and it's a meta joke. I don't know. As you know, our games here on 3-point scale: must play, maybe consider, and don't bother. And I absolutely think you should go out and play Lies of P. And let's be real, I play a ton of Souls games, and most are pretty mid, and there's only a few I'd really put in the upper echelon with FromSoft themselves, one of those being Nioh 2. And honestly, I think Lies of P is so good, I would add it to that tier. So if you enjoyed this genre, you absolutely should lie it up with my real boy Pinocchio. Or P. Whatever. That's all I have for today. Thank you so much for watching. If you played Lies of P, do you think this game is more Sekiro, Bloodborne, or Dark Souls 3? Please let me know in the comments, but regardless, make sure you go out there and give this one a look.